Today's episode is sponsored by the Rising Tide Mastermind. The Rising Tide Mastermind is where people just like you get together every week to help each other with issues. Let's face it, issues are hard, so why start from square one when somebody can tell you what they've done with a similar issue? If this sounds like something that's interesting to you, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind to see if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, and Nation, this is one of my favorite weeks because not only did we have a successful live event here in Atlanta for the Rising Tide Mastermind, tomorrow is the Global 6K for Water. May 18th is the day. Of course, we are all going to have a great time wherever you are around the world. And to learn more about that, it's not too late. Go to scalinguph2o.com/6K and you will learn everything you need to know. Now, one of the things that you might want to know is, do I have to do this with a team? Of course not. You can do it by yourself, but we would love for you to join our team. That's Team Scaling Up Nation. And that's the page that you will go to if you go to scalinguph2o.com/6K. Also from there, you might want to create your own team. I love recommending this to companies to do something up and above our regular day-to-day around water to bring awareness to others about water. So all that information is going to be there as well. Now, is the race timed? People always ask me that. No, the race is not timed. However, you can time yourself if you wish. I decide not to do that because it's not about the time that I finish. It's about the number of people I connect with as we are walking / jogging / running, whatever it is we decide to do. And we try to bring awareness to everybody that we can that wants to have a conversation. Now, a lot of people, what they will do is they will carry a jerry can or a 5-gallon can of water with them to represent what people have to do while they're walking 6 kilometers because they have to go and get water and bring it back. And trust me, when you're wearing that orange shirt with a bib of a child's picture on it and carrying a 5-gallon can, people are going to wonder what you're doing. And let me tell you, if you have not carried a 5-gallon can on 6 kilometers, that is something special. And if you can only imagine having to do that each and every day, it brings a totally new perspective of how other people in the world have to get their water. So once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/6K. That is tomorrow. Now, if you haven't signed up yet, you're probably not going to get a t-shirt overnight. You already know that, but you can sign up, you can participate, you can have fun. And here's something that I think is the most fun. Go ahead and share all of your pictures of your race by using hashtag 6K for water and hashtag scalinguph2o. I love to see those hashtag pictures, and I know the rest of the Scaling Up Nation does as well. I always feel like I'm part of something huge on race day because we are the Scaling Up Nation, and I get to see so many pictures of people in the 6K that are members of the Scaling Up Nation just sharing these pictures. So, Nation, I hope you go out and have a great time tomorrow. It's fun for the entire family. It is fun for the entire office. It's just fun, and it is a great way to bring awareness. Well, here's some awareness that you might want to know about some of the things that are going on in the industrial water treatment industry. The ACE 24 conference is taking place June 10th through 13th in Anaheim, California. This is the place where people get together to discuss and plan for serious issues that will transform the future of water. We'll, of course, have all of that information on our events page, and that, of course, is put on by the American Waterworks Association. Another conference you might want to go to is taking place July 13th through 16th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's the 2024 BOMA International Conference and Expo. BOMA is Building Owners and Managers Association. I had the privilege of being on our local BOMA board here in Georgia, and it was a great experience, and I got to share so much information about the water crisis and how we use water in all the buildings of people that joined BOMA, and brought an awareness and helped them keep an awareness that everything they do with water matters. And that included water treatment, that included better water treatment, and I just had a great time in that capacity. So I hope that's something that you check out. It's been very helpful for me to participate in BOMA, so maybe that's something that you might want to join. Also, the International Water Association is holding their World Water Congress and Exhibition in Toronto, Canada, August 11th through 15th. This conference brings together stakeholders and key contacts within the water industry, and these are groups such as urban water developers, services, participants with industrial agriculture, architects, urban planners, soil and groundwater experts, hydrogeologists, social sciences, and all other people, bringing them together to talk around water. So if this is something that you want to find out more about, go to our events page by going to scalinguph2o.com. Nation, you have heard our next guest on a previous podcast. It's hard to believe that it was over 2 years ago that we heard from this individual. Here is the interview. My returning lab partner is Walid Khoury of Desalytics. Walid, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you, Trace, for hosting me again. And I love the show, so thank you.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I love all the stuff that you put out on social media. You keep us on our toes to make sure we're putting out equal content.
Yeah, it can be a full-time job, you know.
It really is. You think of, okay, what do we do for real, besides all the content production that we do? But I have to say, I'm a huge fan of yours as well. All the interviews that you do, all the different papers that you put out, specifically on LinkedIn. I think you really help the water community.
Thank you, Trace. Thank you, Trace. We're all in the same boat, and I also appreciate all what you're doing. It's really takes a lot of energy and time to spread all the info and the awareness about our industry and how great it is to be there. So thank you also for what you do every day.
It's the best industry in the world, right?
Oh, definitely. I always keep telling this to the younger generation.
Walid, you joined us on episode 230, and it's hard to believe it's been that long ago. And when I look at 230, I think, oh, that was just a couple of months ago, but we're in the 300s now, so I don't know how that happened. What's been going on with you since we last heard from you on the Scaling Up H2O podcast?
You know, it's amazing. I mean, time flies. I think our interview was a little bit more than 2 years ago, and you see, like it's gone already so quickly. Back then, I had just started Desalytics, and I was like in my new entrepreneurship hat, and because I've been always in Fortune 500 water companies, so it was complete shift. But I think the focus was good because it's about Africa, and there are a lot of needs in Africa on the water side. And back then, I think we just had like 2 operations, 2 countries. Today, we are in 8 countries, operating in 8 countries. We have 42 people on the ground. And the good news also is that almost 60% of our team are women engineers, women technicians. So we're big on gender. And this is on the Desalytics part. And as you mentioned on the LinkedIn and conferences, so I've spent a lot of time networking and meeting with global organizations and traveling all around the world and speaking in major events, which gives me also a global perspective that I can apply to Africa, but also tell the African story to the global audience. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I think you've been at every major water conference that I can think of. Do you seek that out, or do they ask you to come speak?
Originally, I was seeking it out. So when I started, I think back the days when we were talking together, I was the one pushing, because back then I was relatively known in the Middle East, and not globally. So I had more the luxury of time to be able to go and seek this out, compared to when you work in a multinational and you have a lot of challenges internally on delivering internal meetings and so on. So I had the luxury of going out and seeking to them. But now the good thing is that they ask me again to come back, and they sponsor the trips and so on. And also I get new requests to join. And what I love about it is now I'm sitting on the board of some of these big organizations. Like, for example, I'm on the advisory board of WEFTEC, for example. So like, these are the major shows, and it's exciting because I can give my input, but also learn a lot from other colleagues.
How did you come up with the name Desalytics? What does that mean?
It's interesting. This website, I had it long time ago. I registered it back then because I was like, okay, the world is moving more to analytics. Back then, there was not really the AI word. It was more like data analytics. So you get the data and you try to do something with it. And I'm a big fan of desalination, even though some people will say like it has negative effects, but we can talk about it later. But so I was saying like the world is shifting more to more data and more technology and innovation. So if you marry both words, analytics and desalination, it comes Desalytics. So I just registered that domain long time ago. And when I was starting the company, I said, you know what, this is one of the biggest drivers, desalination and optimizing the data. Of course, our business is not about desalination only. So we do anything related to water and water reuse. But this is how it started.
They say that you've got to create your own word in order to really own the brand. I'm betting there's not a Chick-fil-A over in Dubai. Is that a correct statement?
No, but we have something similar. But yeah, we don't have Chick-fil-A. Yeah, not yet.
So Chick-fil-A, based here in Atlanta, they actually decided not to release the chicken sandwich because they couldn't own that name, the chicken sandwich. And that's why they came up with this made-up word, Chick-fil-A. And that's what you did.
That's interesting.
Walid, when you try to get ideas for what you're going to post on social media, what's your process? Now, I'm trying to pick your brain for my selfish needs right now, but it's hard when you're trying to think, okay, what's something we haven't talked about? What's something somebody's struggling with? How can I help them? I'm just curious, what do you do to try to figure out the best content choices to put out there?
So it's challenging, as you said. Sometimes it's just out of the blue, like I'm in a conference, I'm in a meeting, and I see a topic. I say, okay, that's interesting for people to discuss. So I try to post a question, and this is how originally I started with all the water questions. So I try to post a question that will kind of engage people to talk about it, and then everybody will learn from everyone. So this is one way. Another shift I do sometimes is by picking a topic that is trending or really a challenge, and then interviewing somebody who's expert in the topic. And I've seen that, the more you pick the brains of other people, you make the discussions more enriching. And luckily in this industry, we have really great minds. You meet with tons of people every day and you see how good they are. So this is a second way of picking some topics. And I think the third way is based on people approaching me and telling me, look, I would love to talk about this topic. It's interesting for the audience. Can I join you in one of the discussions? Or can you post about this? Or can you ask this question? So it's a mix of me searching for a topic or seeing something on LinkedIn. I say, oh, it's interesting for the audience, or somebody else reaching out.
Have you ever posted something and it didn't go over the way you had intended?
I think the first post I posted was interesting. During COVID, this was during COVID. So my question was, is desalination expensive? And it was really interesting how all the posts came, some people against desalination, some people with desalination. So it went really almost viral because of the debate it generated. And the interesting part is that I got a lot of people commenting and posting why they were not from within the industry, but they hear about desalination, and then the first thing that comes to them through the media. So it was kind of interesting. It didn't really go bad in the sense of bad, but I have a couple of posts that went bad. I don't really remember the topics, but what I do usually, I just delete them, So there's no point of fighting when something goes wrong. Better to take it out, because then you can get some bullies, some people, talking, not really being constructive. So I think best is to delete them and avoid all this, because at the end of the day, we're here to deliver a message, to help people understand the industry, to learn more and interact, and not really to be political or religion related, or all these sensitive topics.
I couldn't agree with that more. I went to a course that talked about how to boost your social media ratings and how you should use hashtags and all of that. And they were all about dividing people instead of bringing people together. And if you got people arguing and saying that you didn't know what you were talking about, or having very different views in not a nice way, that boosted ratings. And that's not this industry. That's not what we're about. And we're not going to solve anything that way.
Correct, definitely. One time I had a person writing a nasty comment. So I learned also, so either I delete the comment, or I block it, or I can report the person. But one of the most effective strategies is just ignore the comment, and then it goes down in the algorithm, so nobody sees it. You remember, like when you check some links, you see like more comments. Nobody will go and click no more comments and go down to the last one, So sometimes this also works. So it depends on the context.
Well, as if you didn't have enough going on, you decided to do your own conference last year. Tell us about that experience.
You always connect the dots somewhere, somehow. So when I was at university, I used to work as part-time for a conference organizer. So I used to do like big events in telecom. And it was like part-time. So when they are close to the event, I'll come and help them and so on. So I love this field, but this is like 25 years ago, and when we started the Desalytics in Africa, something I was seeing missing is that there are a lot of misconceptions, when you talk about Africa globally and so on. So I said, okay, why don't we have a big conference where it kind of allies people from different parts of the world to talk about knowledge and technology versus talking about different locations, different markets, and so on. And the focus was more on telling the companies to join us and not talk about themselves, more talk about specific application. So it's like really a technical commercial know-how versus branding. So the first year, it was relatively a smaller event, and we started it the first year. And interestingly is that I saw a lot of interest in this event. And this year we said, okay, we're going to go make it more professional. So we've hired a third-party contractor for the back end. So we made it an exhibition and a conference. So it was like a virtual exhibition, interactive, and so on. And what I appreciated is a lot of companies came on board and sponsored the event, not really because of the audience only to get like this big exposure, but because they believed in the mission we are doing, and they were more like supportive. Because we came asking for budget towards the end of the year, and like usually end of the year, most companies have sorted out already spent all their marketing budget. So they're coming and telling me, look, Walid, we can provide this amount of money. Is it okay for you? And so on. Yes, of course, just join us, and we want, the more we are in this event, the better. So, and it really gave a lot of motivations for my team in Africa, because they saw that even though they are doing something niche in Africa, but a lot of big players are supporting them, like Veolia, like Hack, like all the big names were sponsoring this event. So it created a lot of self-confidence in our team that what they are doing is getting noticed in the global water space.
Is there going to be a Desalytics 2024?
Oh, definitely. We're already now thinking it through. And next week, we have our second annual meeting, internal meeting. We're hosting it in Nairobi. And we're going to talk about it. So we're going to plan how we can go even deeper and making it more worse for people when they attend, more valuable for people when they attend. So yeah, definitely.
I really enjoyed it. I didn't see all of the papers, but the ones that I saw were very thought-provoking, and you had a great lineup of experts in the field.
Definitely, yeah. The experts were amazing, and the learning content, this is what I love about it. So what we do, we republish the videos and on YouTube, and I ask newcomers in my team to go and watch some videos depending on their interest, and because it's a lot of learning, so they learn a lot from just going and watching. And the business and the model is mainly very short presentations, so I challenge them all to present in 10 minutes. We don't want this 30 minutes presentations and people get bored. So every expert will have 10 minutes to deliver the best he can. So it's really challenging for our experts.
Myself and my team, we're trying to create videos through a training course on how to get people to do better practices in water treatment, and also to have a training resource when people hire new people. And we've been consuming a lot of content on how to do that badly and how to do that better. And one of the things that they said, how you can do that badly, is exactly what you said, making it too long. And the ideal video is 3 to 7 minutes, they say. And people would much rather do 30 3-minute videos than they would with the equivalent all in one video. And it's almost like they get a sense of accomplishment that, hey, I did 30 things here instead of just one thing. But the interesting thing was the retention was better.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I mean, definitely, if it's shorter, it will be more engaging and people will be proud of themselves. They've listened to 30 topics, versus just one topic. So yeah, I fully agree with you.
So with that, you and I attend a lot of conferences, and you can't go to a water conference. Whatever the topic is, you're going to hear about water scarcity. And you say, okay, that's one way of looking at it, but there might be a better way of looking at it.
Yeah, this is my biggest frustration. In every single conference or exhibition or major event, or even investor presentation speeches from all these startups, everywhere we talk about water scarcity. Like, the world is gloomy, there is so much water, but there is water scarcity. And it really kills me because in today's age, we have the technologies to treat any type of water. So we shouldn't be talking about water scarcity. We should be talking about water abundance. And in 2024, I decided that in every single conference I will go to, I will talk about water abundance. And if somebody talks about water scarcity, I'll stop them and tell them, but there is plenty of water. What are we doing about it? And on your podcast is the first time I'm mentioning it this in 2024. So it's kind of a new thing.
Well, I think it's a great thing to talk about because, okay, it's very passive when we talk about water scarcity, and I don't think anybody would argue with that. But when we talk about abundance, it now puts the power on us to do something about it. It's there. We just got to figure out how to bring it to where it needs to be, how to clean it to where it needs to be.
Correct. And, like when you think about it, of course, there is the sea where you have plenty of water. It's salty water, but it's plenty of water. You have the underground water, the rivers, but you have water everywhere. Even in our toilet, you have water going out, And today it's still crazy. Like you bring water from far away, you pump it, you spend energy at the day in times where we talk about energy and CO2 emissions. So you pump the water miles away, you consume it, and then you pump it again miles away to dispose it and treat it. So it's really the whole way of looking at water is completely distorted. And that's why we need to start changing the narrative and saying that we have plenty of water. What are we doing about it, and how can we use it, consume it in the same location versus really having to go and fetch water from all around the world?
So when you have those conversations at conferences, where does the conversation go from there?
Look, I think the problem we have is, as industry, is we always talk among each other. So when you go, for example, to the major water shows, the major events, it's basically water people talking to water people. And each one of us is trying to sell his technology. So we have all the technologies, but I think we're missing the point. We're not talking to those who can make it happen. So, for example, politicians. So the political will is really key in making things happen, because you need the legislations to be supportive. There are a lot of cases. I can talk about a lot of cases where they have done things differently, only because of a political will. And because the government or the politicians, they said, you know what, we have a challenge, we have to fix it, and we cannot continue like this.
You're, of course, talking from a global perspective, and we're very privileged. This podcast gets listened to all over the world. Are there different messages where we should be talking to the people that are in political power? Should we have a message over here in the United States? Should there be a message over where you are in Dubai? Should there be a separate message over in Africa? What are the messages, and what can we do about it as the scaling up nation?
It's a great question, Trace. I think the more we can show these politicians examples of how other regions or other countries have done things differently, then they see the potential. Because if you don't know what's possible, you will never go and create a legislation around it. So, for example, if you talk on Hong Kong, in the 60s, they had a challenge. They don't have enough water. It's an island, and they don't have much water. So they mandated that going forward, every single new building will have seawater toilet flashing. It's not rocket science, it's flashing your toilet with seawater, but it has to be implemented, So they issued a legislation forcing all the new buildings to have seawater toilet flashing, which means you have to invest in a network to distribute seawater across the city. Every building has to have a separate piping network to be able to have corrosive water going through their toilet flashing. So everything has to be changed. But this was a legislation. So today, 85% of all the toilets in Hong Kong are flashed with seawater, which means 20% reduction of their water consumption. This would have never happened if there was no political will. Same thing, for example, in China, what they are doing now about the sponge cities. So slowing down the water. The challenge we have today is that water, there is rain, there is floods, because everything, we don't allow the water to stay. So it's all built and water goes as quickly as possible. So slowing down the water, creating these reservoirs, creating these tanks, these terraces where water can get stuck and released slowly. In Namibia, for example, Namibia is one of the first users of wastewater for drinking application. So they are among the first. And you will not think in Africa you'll have a country who's using wastewater. Now you have projects, for example, in Orange County and the US going for even maybe indirect water use. So they store them underground and then they pump them again. So there are a lot of cases where things have been done differently. Singapore, for example, about New Water, where they have created a fourth source of water. They call it New Water, and it's sold to industries. So a different network of water network and so on. So I think the message should be to all the politicians is that, look, we have to look at water differently. We understand water is not sexy. It will not get you the elections because, it's not an infrastructure that you see like a bridge. If you build a bridge, everybody will see it, will say, oh, our politicians are doing something. Water is underground, so nobody will see it. So we have to tell them that, look, you can do things differently and you can talk about it. It's a great, like New Water in Singapore, it's a proud. Everybody talks about it always because they teach it at school and everything.
The United Nations has their Sustainable Development Goals, and Goal 6 is to make sure that water is available and sustainable and sanitized to everybody on this planet. That's something that is near and dear to your heart, but there might be people here today that are just hearing that for the first time. Can you talk about SDG 6 and how you're getting involved with that?
It's excellent that you bring this up. So SDG is part of multiple goals. So the United Nations, as you mentioned, have put multiple goals to improve livelihood, and improve human capital across all the world, because they saw there are some disparities. So, for example, some of the goals, like SDG 12, is about sustainable cities and communities. SDG 8 about decent work and economic growth to give chance for people to get a better job and grow economically and so on. SDG 14 on the climate action. So there are multiple SDGs. One of them is about water. And the idea was that there are still people today who don't have access to potable water. Basically, they have to go and walk miles away to get water for drinking water. And imagine how many hours you're wasting per day just to get water. So you don't have time to do something more productive. You cannot go to school, for example, because usually it's girls who go and collect the water. And also, you don't have toilet flashing in your houses, so it's even worse. So a woman has to go outside at night to go to do her needs, which is not safe, and so on. And all the focus was on to push and have equal access to water and sanitation across all the planet. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, but we've made a lot of progress. But it's known, like UN was going to miss on all the goals. We're going to miss on all the goals. We haven't done much traction very quickly.
The goal is for us to have water and sanitization for everybody that resides on planet Earth by 2030. Well, on my calendar, we got 6 years left on that. What do you think? What's your prediction? How close are we going to come? Are we going to hit it?
No, we're not. We're not. And there is now a big understanding that we're not. And that's why all the talk is now about what we should do differently and how can we change the narrative.
So you have got all of these industrial water treaters listening to this podcast. I'm sure nobody's surprised that we are not going to meet that goal. And I'm sure it was a great goal and everybody was excited about it when they made it. How many years ago was that?
It's a good question. I don't know, Sean.
I don't know either, but I'm sure everybody applauded themselves and it was great. And I love how you're changing the conversation. Hey, the tools are already there. We don't need to talk about the problem. We need to talk about how we're going to solve that. So with that in mind, we need to reset that date, obviously. But with all the water treaters that are listening today, what do you want them to do to try to help get us back on track to whatever that new date is going to be?
Yeah, you know, there's something called the transfer paradox. And this is where a wealthy nation gives free of charge technology to a poorer country. And that's why they call it transfer paradox. The wealthy nation gets richer and the poor country gets poorer because they will not invest in a local solution. They will just be dependent on a foreign technology, which is not maybe addressing their needs. So I think as water engineers and water companies, we need to be closer to the ground and understand what's really the problem. And rather than giving equipment or giving the technology, trying to develop technology locally with the local people. If it's in Latin America or Africa, where there is really a need. Because then you can understand what solutions can be manufactured locally, what solution can be maintained, because you need the maintenance. This is the key part of it. There's no point of sending a reverse osmosis system if nobody can later on maintain it. And I think this is how we need to start changing, because some technology for us, which is really required, might be an overkill for a village in Africa. And also you have a lot of difference in terms of landscape. So in Africa, you have a lot of fragmented and decentralized treatment situations. You don't have the luxury of having a big network and pumping water, because the landscape is very fragmented. It's huge. It's massive. If you go, for example, in Zambia to go and see a mine, you have to fly to the capital, then take another flight, and then drive miles away. It's very huge as a continent. So that's why we really need to be on the ground and to understand what are the solutions that can be jointly developed versus just sending technology. And I think this is where we're missing big, is that we're putting a lot of money in technologies that are not sustainable in Africa. An example that you don't think about in let's say, in the developing economies like Europe or the US, you have a lot of dispensers of water that you pay with SMS. So you go on the dispenser, you put your code, and then you get a liter of water, you get 5 liters of water, and then you pay through your mobile phone for the 5 liter of water after you have filled in your own bucket. So these are things you will never think about in developed economies, and these have been developed locally. So if you ask somebody outside to provide water, he would have brought in a water treatment plant, but who's going to maintain it and pay for the fees and so on? So
they're great points, and a lot of times people have the best intentions, but once they leave, they don't think about how things are going to be maintained. How is that really going to be sustained? There's a group that we try to support. It's called World Vision, and they do a global 6K every year. And this year it's May 18th. And they call it a 6K because, as you alluded to, the average person that doesn't have access to clean drinking water has to walk 6 kilometers to get water that most people would not want to drink. And along those paths, they're not in school, so they're not getting educated. They're on some paths that maybe people that are nefarious, that are stealing kids and taking them into human trafficking and other horrible things. So just by bringing water into where they are, it changes everything. And I love this organization because not only are they bringing an awareness to that, they're also making sure that they understand the infrastructure that's coming in and they're responsible for it. They know, because they've been part of it, how to build it, how to maintain it.
Correct. And as you said, having the local partnership is key. And it's very challenging, like really for people to have access to water. One time I was in Nairobi, and as a startup, you always go through up and down mindsets. You're sometimes motivated, sometimes you're down, and so on. So I was driving in Nairobi, and I see an old man cleaning his face with water from rain in a pothole on the street. So this is for him the clean water he can have access to. I mean, it's not clean water, but this is what's available for him to clean his face, to wash his face. So that's where we feel like really how blessed we are and how lucky we are not to have these challenges. But then you think that, okay, you know what, I have to do more and try to help locally and find solutions. And that's how you believe more on what we're doing as a water industrialist in terms of bringing technology and solutions to developing economies.
It is hard to think of when you're just used to going into the other room, turning a faucet, and clean, drinkable water comes out in abundance. And what if that didn't happen? I mean, how would our day change? And every thought now is around water. I think that really changes how we need to get involved and how incredible this crisis is.
Yeah, definitely. And to come back to your point on what can we do differently, we need to think mid-term to long-term and not like immediate return on investment. So, for example, now there's something called the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, free trade area that is now developing across 55 African Union countries. So imagine the market, it's 1 billion population that is going to grow in terms of population, the youngest population on the planet. And also economically, it's improving. You have more industrialization, you have more urbanization and so on. So the pressure on water is higher, but the potential is even bigger. So it's not like the EU or the US yet, but as a market, it's really becoming big. And it's a free trade agreement, so you can move goods almost everywhere in Africa. It's in the process, so it's not yet finalized across all Africa, but today you have areas. So imagine if the global multinationals start putting plants locally in Africa to manufacture things locally. Not only they will create jobs, but they can also tap into a huge market all across Africa. So these are the things we need to start thinking differently, so then we can really impact SDG 6 and get there, versus doing things outside. I'll give you a quick example. So if you're buying, let's say, a chemical from the US for testing reagents for testing water, so a US customer will buy it, let's say, for $1. An African customer will buy it for $3 because you have to ship it by air, it's hazardous, it costs much more to ship, and then there's a local markup and so on. So you end up 1-to-3 ratio, but then the purchasing power of an African customer is maybe 2-3 times less than an American customer. So the ratio is like 1-to-6, 1-to-8, and that's why we need to shift the thinking, and start finding. It's like the US companies and the European companies went to China and manufactured in China and were able to get good understanding of the Chinese market.
So we have people that are in charge of very large companies that has the intellectual property of the equipment that we're talking about. What do you want them to do to help this crisis? And then also we have people that are listening that just work for a water treatment company. What can they do?
Yeah, and exactly what you mentioned. That's what I spend most of my time when I'm in conferences, because I get to know the CEOs and talking to them, and I try to explain the potential in Africa, because all these companies, they have shareholders, so they cannot just go and say, okay, I'm going to open a manufacturing plant. They need to understand more. And I think advocacy is the best way to get there. So, for example, in some of the conferences, I've done African panels. I brought in some African leaders to talk about their market, about their potential in front of the global audience, and vice versa. So I think communication is really key. Like events like the Desalytics Water Week, events like all these global conferences, they really help people to connect and understand the need. For people who want to volunteer and so on, I always encourage them to find a local partner, not just go and work remotely. So some people, they go and they spend 1 week in Tanzania or 2 weeks. It's very good because it gives them, like, really is like when we go to customers, we go on the site, correct? Because we want to understand the customer. Same thing, if you go in the country and you spend a week or 2 weeks, it's very rewarding, not only because you're doing something good, but also because you start understanding how things are run, and it's really inspiring.
Walid, we spoke about SDG 6, but what about private industry? What are some things they can do?
Yeah, private industries are one of the biggest users of water, because it touches everything. It touches their makeup water, their processes, their discharge. And that's the thing I like to focus a lot about, because we might have water scarcity, but what is making it worse is that industries are taking more of this water, and also they are discharging more of wastewater. So they are a big problem of water scarcity. But they are also noticing that they can be part of the solution. And you've seen like a lot of announcements from Microsoft, from Google, from AB InBev, P&G. All of them, they want to contribute. And there's a concept now called water positive. So these industries are trying to improve their water balance. So basically, they want to generate more water than they consume. And the challenge today is that many definitions are different. So what do you call water positive? What do you call sustainability? What do you call water balance? So it's all different definitions. And there is now a think tank. I'm part of a water positive think tank, which is an association of multiple leaders in the industry, and very global, very diverse. And we're trying to first have the definition of what is water positive, so everybody can align to it, but also having a certification in place. So, for example, if food and beverage manufacturing plant say I'm water positive, can you prove it? Can you show it? What does it mean? And what is the process you have in place? So and I think this is big, because it will be similar to the CO2 carbon credits, where people transfer carbon credits. And the good thing is that all these industries, they have the financial means to make it happen. It's different than talking to a municipality or a government employee. These are like industries, they want to generate returns, and they want to show also their investors that they are working closely to achieve a sustainable goal. And also they are becoming more and more faced with populations around them where they are competing with them on the water resource. So that's why they have to become more and more efficient in terms of water consumption, how they use water, and what do they do with it. And I think it's exciting, because now you're seeing all these major players are talking about their goals of reducing water and so on.
And those companies are making products, and consumers are becoming more and more conscious of the products that they're purchasing. And they want to know the products they're purchasing are doing a better job for sustainability for the environment. So they're honestly being forced into doing those things. But by doing that, by supporting companies that do have an initiative to help the things that we're talking about, we all play a role.
Yeah, and it's excellent for all of us, because the water industry is very innovative. People think it's kind of boring industry, but it's not. If you look, we have so many technologies. It's just questions of applying them. And having this industrial space will help us, because industries are usually very fast in terms of adopting technologies. If it works, they do a pilot. If it works, they take it. They don't go through a lot of bureaucratic, approval, because as you said, they have return on investments, they have shareholders, they have public who's going to buy from them or not. So they want to show how good they are doing for the environment. So I think this is one of the biggest vectors for us in terms of growth, but not only growth in the sense economic, but also growth in terms of awareness, because they will be the messengers. They will go and talk how great they are doing in terms of reusing water and discharging less and so on. So it's an excellent time to be in the industry.
Wally, before we get to the lightning round questions, what conferences are we going to see you at this year?
So, it's always very challenging to decide on the conferences. So what I'm trying to do is to be really in the major events where I can make an impact and also, of course, learn a lot. And also, I want to expand my understanding of the water industry, because as you mentioned, what happens in the US is different than other parts of the world. So I'm going to be attending few shows in Europe. So WEX in Madrid, WEX Global in Madrid in March. And then there is a Global Water Summit in London and IFAT in Munich. But then I'm expanding also more to Mexico. I went last year for Aquatech. I gave a keynote speech. It was really interesting for me, an eye-opener to see what's happening in Latin America. So I'm going again this year to Aquatech Mexico, but also Aquatech China this year. So it will also give me a different understanding about the market. And of course, WEFTEC is it's my favorite event, so I always go back to WEFTEC, So, and lastly, we'll have few events in Africa, but these are more customer-facing events in Africa for our company, so where we can help and advocate. So it's going to be busy and. But at the same time, exciting because I have a lot of content to publish, and share with the audience. So it's a good learning for everyone.
Speaking of that content, where can people find you?
So best place for me is LinkedIn because I really believe that as a water professional, and maybe any other industry, but for the water industry, the best place to learn on what's happening recently in the technology, what's happening, who's meeting who is who, and also what are the top topics, the trends, is on LinkedIn, because everybody is talking on LinkedIn about the technology, and companies are also all pushing their content on LinkedIn. It used to be a job portal. It's not anymore a job portal. You can get much more returns from the site. And the other thing, I encourage also people to go on YouTube also, because in YouTube, as you said, like a lot of content, there's a lot of content and people are developing content. You can learn a lot from this. I'm not very active on YouTube. I'm trying to push more videos on YouTube, but LinkedIn definitely is where you can find me.
YouTube is amazing because when you post to YouTube, transcripts go all over the place and it makes it easier for people to find you. There's so many things that are built into that Google platform. And of course, Google dominates all the search engines. So yeah, it's just, that's where you want to get your stuff for that reason.
Correct. And I can also in YouTube, as you mentioned, it's well done for such things. So it's basically you have a library. On LinkedIn, with time, you cannot find the videos, while on YouTube, you can always find them grouped under categories and so on. So yeah, this is where I need to double down efforts this year.
Walid, you were here once before. You already answered our standard lightning round question. So I have a few for you this time around, if you're ready.
Yes, please.
My first question is, you're a water guy. You're a very well-read water guy. What are some of your favorite water references?
So in terms of references, earlier I was a lot involved on the field, so it was more like technical. So one of my favorite books back then was the Nalco Water Handbook. It was like really a thick book where you can get all the answers you want. Today, unfortunately, I'm not anymore really on the books. I'm more on tools. So for example, ChatGPT. So if I want something, I will go and ask ChatGPT and then challenge it to come up with a better answer or a different, because I think you can dive into it. And now the latest tool I'm using is perplexity.ai. It's also a search engine, but it's better structured than ChatGPT. And it gives you a lot of insights because at the same time it searches the web and gives the references. So it shows what are the references coming from. So I'm seeing more like the shift from static books to more digital versions that you can more and more probe and challenge and prompt, to get better answers.
I think one of our goals as industrial water treaters is we have to find our replacement, at least our replacement, if not more. And unfortunately, we're not getting people that are rushing into this industry. So I'm curious, what are some things you think we should be doing to make sure we're encouraging people to join this amazing industry?
I fully agree with you. It's really amazing, and we need to spend time talking about it. The challenge is that it's not sexy in terms of young generation. When they look, okay, I can be digital, I can go AI, I can. So we need to talk about how these technologies are embedded in our space. Like digital marketing. We're really good in digital marketing, but we should talk about it. Like you can come and do digital marketing for water, which is more rewarding because it's a social impact activity, water. So I think we should always talk about the water, how impactful it is on everything we do, and encourage people to join. So, for example, you get chemists doing chemistry. We should encourage them to come and tackle the water chemistry versus going to a petrochemical or different technologies. And we need to do more advocacy, going to universities, and encouraging internships. Last year, I had an intern from secondary classes. She was like 15. I bet you this lady will go later once she goes to work. She will be looking for something or study something related to the water industry because she saw it differently. If you don't give them the chance to see what is water and the impact of water, they will not really find it attractive.
Right now, as we're speaking, you are 9 hours ahead of me in time zones. You are in Dubai. So, Walid, what's a fun fact about Dubai that we should all know?
So, fun fact mixed with water. Okay, so we have one of the largest fountains, and the same company who built this fountain is the one who did the Bellagio in Las Vegas. So you see, like it's really a global world, and we're tackling similar technologies and all around the world. But what I love about it is that it's massive. When you see the fountain and you understand the treatment technology behind it. So you think that really we're really good in terms of innovation. Because, 20 years ago, I'm sure nobody would have thought they can make such a fountain working without avoiding any scale on the nozzles, and biofouling and Legionella and so on. So it's really a great one to watch. Engineering-wise, not just the visual part.
The Burj Khalifa is on my list. Have you been there?
I've been there, and in fact, now I can see it. I'm in front of Burj Khalifa, and the fountain is next to the Burj Khalifa. And it's a marvel. It's a marvel of engineering. And again, the water part was also challenging. How do you pump water 800 meters, above without bursting the pipes? So they had to come up with solutions to get the water up. And how do you take the wastewater out? So all of this shows like where we are in terms of innovation.
I've read so much about that building and the construction. It really was a modern marvel. They had to reinvent how they pump and mix concrete because they were going up so high. It's just amazing. So if anybody wants to, turn on the Discovery Channel, there's probably a dozen shows out there on it. It is just fascinating.
But I would love to have you here around. Come and visit us, and then I'll take you around and see all the technologies and what's happening in the city. It's really fascinating. When you think, and this comes back again to the vision and the political will, if you have the right political will, you can make anything achievable. So that's why I always emphasize on, if you want to make a shift and move from scarcity to abundance, we need the political will and we need advocacy to get there.
It's a great way to wrap up the show, and I'm taking you up on that offer. I'm going to make my plane tickets right after we finish this recording.
That's excellent. That's very good news.
Walid, thanks for once again coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Thank you, Trace, for hosting me. It's always an honor to be here.
Thank you again, Walid. I love all the content that he puts out on social media. There are several people that are as consistent with content as we are on the Scaling Up H2O podcast, and I love sharing content with them. We kind of challenge each other to make sure we're always on time and we're always putting out the best content. And I've met so many people within that space that have just made me better at what we do here each and every week, and Walid is, of course, one of those people. I love how he's getting involved with a lot of these associations to bring what he brings to social media to all of these conferences. So hopefully I will see Walid soon at a conference that we are both attending. And Nation, you heard it here. I got an invitation from Walid to come visit him in Dubai. I've always wanted to go to Dubai. It's just really cool what they created there. And how cool was it when I told him that one of my favorite structures was the Burj Khalifa. And he said, "Oh, I'm looking at it out of my window right now." How cool is that? My son and I love watching documentaries on how they built the Burj Khalifa. And it was really a modern marvel. In fact, that was probably one of the shows that we watched. It has so many records. Now, you might not know it's 160 stories. It's 2,716 and a half feet tall. That's 828 meters if you're not on the imperial system. And it has all of these records. It's the tallest building in the world. It's the tallest freestanding structure in the world. It has the highest number of stories in the world. It's the highest occupied floor structure in the world. It's the highest outdoor observation deck in the world. It's the longest travel distance elevator in the world. It's the tallest service elevator in the world. And it is the tallest of the super tall. Apparently, there's a category of super tall skyscrapers. Well, it is the tallest of that. There is just so much that they had to reinvent in order to create this structure. They had to figure out how to get concrete pumped up so high without it itself starting to cure before it got there. And of course, as you can imagine, things get pretty heavy if you're pumping them up that high. They had that issue with water, and they had to figure out all these booster stations. They had to make sure people were safe if there was a fire, so they had to do all of this stuff. They had to figure out how to make the building structurally sound because, as we all know, skyscrapers need to sway. And I don't know if you've experienced that before, but I was on the top of the Westin building, which is one of the tallest buildings here in Atlanta, 70-something floors. I was the president of the Association of Water Technologies. I got the privilege of staying in the Jimmy Carter presidential suite. And let me tell you, when you put your head down on the 70th-something floor, it would sway, and you could feel it. And I told myself, hey, I studied physics. I know if it wasn't swaying, I would have to worry. But still, trying to go to sleep and knowing that you are swaying, that was something interesting. I can't imagine what it's like on the top of the Burj Khalifa. But Walid, I'm going to take you up on that offer. You know, a couple of years ago, I can't remember the organization. It was around COVID, so it was actually canceled. I was asked to speak over in Dubai. So maybe I can get that gig back and go visit Walid, and I can bring back some firsthand experiences around the Burj Khalifa. Well, nation, I want to introduce our friend James McDonald with a brand new installment of Drop by Drop.
Welcome to Drop by Drop with James, the podcast segment where we wonder, explore, think about, imagine, and learn industrial water treatment, you guessed it, drop by drop, together. Do you know what I like to do sometimes? Do you? I like to read the summary of method and the interferences for water testing. I do. You should hang out at parties with me. I'm a real riot. Anyway, there is a lot to be learned by just reading these two sections of a test procedure. For example, did you know the Farivar method of total iron converts all soluble iron and most insoluble forms of iron in the sample to soluble ferrous iron? Then the soluble ferrous iron reacts with 110 phenanthrene indicator to form an orange color in proportion to the concentration of the iron in the sample? The summary says it converts most insoluble forms of iron. So right away, I could imagine exceptions to this caveat. Reading the interferences for the total iron test, I see that insoluble iron oxides in the sample may require a digestion to make them soluble. I also noticed that molybdate at 50 milligrams per liter has no effect on results. But what about over 50 milligrams per liter? That's where the Farivar method for total iron comes in. I learned all of that by just reading those two little sections of the test procedure. What else is out there waiting to be learned? I'm James McDonald, and I want to encourage you to be like water by forming bonds with those around you, dissolving new knowledge, and making worthy ripples, drop by drop.
Thank you, James. And Nation, thank you for bringing an awareness to the global water crisis. Maybe you had never heard of the Sustaining Development Goal 6 that we talked about today. Well, now you do. Now you know that falls right in line with the 6K that we are doing tomorrow. We as water treaters, I feel, have a responsibility to make sure people understand that, one, not everybody has access to clean, sanitized drinking water, and we have a duty to make sure that the water that we have is being treated properly like we do each and every day. We have a knowledge because we are in the industry, but not everybody understands that, and I challenge each and every one of you to make sure people you're talking with understand the impact that they have on water and understand the impact of what would happen if we did not have water, if it was not distributed in the way that it needs to be. Nation, I can't wait to see your pictures tomorrow by hashtagging 6K for water and hashtagging scaling up H2O. I'm going to be out there at our favorite park with our team. I can't wait to see you and your team. And I'll have a brand new episode for you next week on Scaling Up H2O. Scaling Up Nation, there's no doubt about it. I love this industry. I love to train in this industry. I love to coach in this industry. And one of my favorite things is when I hear people receive their Certified Water Technologist examination. Well, I want to put all of those things together and offer you an opportunity to build your confidence so you can take the CWT examination. Go to scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep and see the course that we have created to help build you confidence so you can sign up and take your CWT examination. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/CWT prep.